laissez-faire, free market, winner takes all. Bonus for those
Dom,
who see houses.
it's been ages.
Investments,
Oh, hey.
hideaways,
How you doing?
Nice little pension plots, but not homes for the...
Just a heads up to the gays. Pretty sure there's a journo honey trap on Grindr.
You're kidding.
In September 2023, several members of the Liberal Democrat Party started receiving strange messages on the hookup site Grindr during their annual conference in Bournemouth. The user called himself MXL, said he was 28 and interested in chat, friends and hookups. His profile displayed a blonde man in his 20s. He was prying for gossip, dirt on the members attending the conference.
What's the worst thing you've ever seen an MP do? Any MPs you think would be interested in sleeping with me?
Someone made up a story and fed it to him.
Hot.
He replied.
Got any images?
Grindr shows users' profiles in their area, meaning that to many, MXL appeared to be attending the conference. Several staffers thought he was a journalist posing as someone on the inside, trying to unearth damaging information about the party. But MXL was not a journalist or a member, and he was not actually in Bournemouth. Someone spotted he was using a feature on the app where you can set your location, and he appeared to be in North London. In one case, the conversation moved on to WhatsApp. The staffer asked what MXL's real name was. He said it was Charlie. A few weeks later, Labour held their annual conference in Liverpool. MXL was sure to make an appearance. He began messaging attendees on Grindr. One staffer was reportedly sent explicit photos.
Are you at the conference this year, man? Would be great to finally meet. It's Charlie, by the way. I'd send you a reminder pic, but you probably shouldn't open something like that in public. Hey, would be good to see you at some point. About time we had some fun.
When prompted, he told users he worked for a lobbying organisation and was manning a stall in the convention centre. In late October of last year, Labour secured 2 Conservative strongholds in by-elections in mid-Bedfordshire and Tamworth. The honey trapper was hard at work too. Several Parliament workers on the campaign received WhatsApp messages from a number they didn't have saved.
Hey, you staying up for the by-election results?
What?
It's Charlie, by the way. Hey, long time no speak. But think I saw you from a distance in MB yesterday. How are you?
Sorry, who is this?
I'd be offended, but not surprised if you don't remember me. Hey, you still work for... Miss you in Westminster.
I don't think we've met.
A broadcaster was asked about them and their boyfriend.
How are you and doing? Was very nice to hear you on the radio yesterday.
All of the recipients were male, some were gay, some were straight, and members from all different parties.
I'm single again, so making the most of the gays in Westminster.
Sorry?
You do look good.
Right, please don't message me again.
The next day, another worker got a message from someone called Abby. Abby said she knew the person after working together on a previous political campaign.
Hey, long time no speak. Still working for... It's Abby, by the way.
Sorry, I don't have this number saved.
Well, that's awkward. We hung out a few times while I worked in Parliament and had a little flirt.
This exchange was later given to a Politico reporter, Aggie, Chambre, who eventually broke the Westminster Honeytrap story, alongside her colleague Dan Bloom. Despite it being from a different number, Aggie and Dan linked the phrasing with a WhatsApp Dan had also received during by-elections, sparking their intrigue in the case.
It was 12 minutes to 10, I don't remember that, I have checked on my phone, and I got this message from an unknown number saying, long time no speak.
How's by-election night looking? X.
And I thought, okay, I've put out a call for, whoever you are, activists on the ground, etc., send me your by-election gossip. So it didn't strike me as particularly unusual. And I said, sorry, who is this? And they said, it's Charlie.
It's Charlie. We met while I was working in Parliament ages ago. Had a little flirt.
And I thought, in fact, I think I said to you, Aggie, I said, that's a bit weird.
Charlie had an ambiguous profile picture. A man and a woman sat down for dinner, both smiling at the camera.
And then obviously we got out of the car and had to accredit for the by-election and all the rest of it. And I kind of just sent some cursory reply saying, yeah, super busy, and then, didn't really think about it.
2 different numbers, 2 different profile pictures, but linked by this strange turn of phrase, had a little flirt.
And I think on the 3rd time I said, sorry, but I still don't really know who this is. Could you tell me? Trying to be polite because I thought I probably did meet this person and maybe they thought I was flirting with them even though, I didn't intend to. And there's been some misunderstanding. They said that we had met in sports, which is the sports and social. And I thought, well, they know something about Parliament, they must work in Parliament. Eventually I was like, well, who are you in the photo? Are you the man or the woman? And they said, oh,
I'm the man. Haha, you thought I was my sister.
And I thought, right, okay, so they know that I'm gay and they're trying to pretend that they flirted with me, etc. This person knows something about me. They escalated it beyond anything that I was saying and sent a picture which I never actually opened, but from the context, it was quite clearly going to have been an explicit photo. All sorts of thoughts do go through your head, like, who could be doing something like this? Is it, to sound a bit conspiratorial, a foreign power? Or is it some, crazy person doing this for their own gratification? And we just didn't really know.
Over the next few months, the honey trapper took a bit of time off, or possibly had a heavy Christmas.
Careful of his eye.
But everything seemed to go cold for a while.
All right, get out. Don't touch that.
By the following February, Aggie, the journalist from Politico, was strongly on the scent and had begun digging around in Westminster for others who may have also been targeted. She messaged a colleague friend to see if they had heard anything.
OMG! My friend had a message from someone he supposedly met at Labour conference. Does that line up? It was yesterday and out of the blue. He thinks she's probably real, though.
Aggie asked if her name was Abby.
No. It was Charlotte.
Aggie got in touch with him straight away. He was another Labour Party official.
I got a call from a friend saying a journalist was looking into some weird texts that had been sent to a few people, suspecting a possible catfish. My heart just completely sank, and I massively panicked, worried I'd ruined my life and my career with one reckless, impulsive decision. I tried calling the number a couple of times, but got nothing back. I was almost in tears when I dragged a friend to the smoking area to tell them what happened.
24 hours earlier, this staffer had received a WhatsApp message from an unknown number.
Long time no speak. How are you? Still single? Eyes emoji.
I did think it was a bit odd at first, but I'd put the first couple of messages and a screenshot of the profile picture into a couple of group chats with my mates to see what they thought. None of them recognised her, and to be honest, I should have stopped texting back then. When I started asking for more details about who they were and how we'd met, it was like they had a full backstory planned out. They said we'd probably met at an event at Labour conference. They said we'd spoken about trade unions, which, yeah, sounds a lot like me. They said they work for a large charity in public affairs, which was also very plausible. And they said they lived in Black Horse Road, which makes a lot of sense for a woman in their 20s. The detail which I think was a real stroke of genius was they said they had just split up with their boyfriend before Labour conference, then got back together afterwards, and then split up again. Which, yeah, was very plausible. That kind of sealed the deal for me. And honestly, I just couldn't shake the feeling that I did actually meet them at conference. I get that your mind can make up false memories and things are a bit more blurry when you've had a few drinks, but I just couldn't get it out of my head.
This staffer's conversation quickly turned sexual, specifically after he asked if she wanted to get a drink.
It all progressed very naturally. It didn't progress to sexting straight away. When they were sending me nudes and they were asking me to send some back, I thought just, why not?
If you're lucky, I'll slip you a picture of me in my gym shorts.
Aggie checked the number. It was the same as Charlie's. Even after receiving this information, the staffer still stayed in contact, partly out of disbelief, but also acute curiosity. Curious as to whether they really did know this person.
I said I was going on holiday, so asked for their Instagram so we could keep in touch there. I thought there was still a chance it was real, and that would be confirmation of it, but they never replied. They texted me again when I got back, and I arranged a time to meet up with them the week after, more to put my mind at ease than anything else. This was the worst part of it, to be honest. Texting them back and forth for a week, trying to play along enough to keep them interested if they were real, just so we could meet up, and I could put my fears to rest. They didn't ask me for any personal details, or any details about work, which I wouldn't have given away anyway. I was getting sent nude pictures at 8 in the morning when I was on the train to work. It just made me feel really uncomfortable. The day came when we arranged to meet up at a pub near mine, and they were texting me in the morning asking me normal questions like what the vibe of the bar was and what to wear. I texted them when I got to the bar, and I sat there for half an hour waiting for them to show up. Finally, I rang the number, and when they didn't pick up, I left. I was so paranoid about what it could be, even that I was maybe being watched, that I walked the long way home. They texted me later apologising loads.
Oh my god, I'm so sorry. You probably don't want to hear from me. I came home so ill from work this afternoon, I fell asleep.
I text back the next day saying not to worry about it, but that was the last text I sent. When I found out the same number had also been texting other people, posing as a man, my heart sank. Up until then, and even though I knew people were looking into it, I still thought it was possible that they were real. I just couldn't believe that someone could have that much inside knowledge on Westminster, know so much about me, and text in such a believable way, and not be real.
Henry Zeffman, a chief BBC political correspondent, also came out to say he had received messages around this time.
So on the morning of the 10th of March this year, which was a Sunday, I got a message from an unknown number. Their WhatsApp name was Charlie. Photo actually of a man and a woman. And it said, Henry, long time no speak.
How are you doing? Miss seeing you around Westminster.
And I do remember sort of, zooming into the photo and going, oh, this is awkward. I just can't place either of these people. I don't know which one they're pretending to be, but they're clearly writing like they know me. So I just replied saying, very sorry, who is this? They replied instantly, haha, it's Charlie.
I used to work in Parliament and we swapped numbers after drinking one night. I'd pretend to be offended, but it was a while ago.
And again, I sort of zoomed in on the photo and was thinking, drinking in Parliament? I mean, yeah, occasionally a political journalist might be known to have a drink with a contact in Westminster, but, the point is to remember the interactions and derive some stories from them rather than to completely forget the person you're talking to, let alone anything they said. So I just thought, this is not plausible. So I just left it. Instantly, they came back. Random Sunday message, I know.
I'm going to guess you aren't still single. Should I bow out gracefully? Lucky girl.
At that point, I thought, don't know what's going on here, but it's definitely weird. It's definitely pretty forward. So I blocked the contact, got on with my day. Weirdly, almost exactly 24 hours later, by this point, so Monday, I'm in the office, I got a WhatsApp from another unknown number. This time showing up as Abby. It's a woman, although you can't see her face this time. She is sort of standing, her face turned away from the camera in front of the ruins of an abbey. I don't know if that was a deliberate play on words or just the sort of most ambiguous photo they could find. And it said, are you in Westminster today?
Monday drink?
I just remember instantly thinking, well, this is clearly the same person as yesterday. I didn't instantly accuse, I just replied, who is this? As I had done the day before. They said,
Abby Miller.
And I said, sorry, I'm not sure who that is. And they replied,
I interned at the Times a few years ago.
By the way, I worked at the Times for several years before I moved to the BBC last year. And I just knew that they didn't. So again, I blocked them. But for about 45 minutes, I was just sitting there thinking, God, this is really odd. I knew it was a scam, but what sort of scam is it? Describing themselves as a former intern at the Times. It's not the world's most sophisticated thing, but it required a bit of thought. But yeah, it had a level of kind of idiomatic language. It implied a level of contextual knowledge of Westminster, of the political world, and how it intersects with the journalistic world, for sure. So then I thought, well, I'm going to unblock them and see what they've been sending. And the second I unblocked them, I got a message saying,
did you block and unblock me?
With a crying emoji. So I just said, what do you want? They said, a message to see if you fancied a drink. I said, yes, but you are clearly the same person as yesterday. They replied,
I was sad you blocked me.
Which I took, actually, I think probably as an admission that they were the same person as the day before. I kept saying, who are you? Who are you? And they were replying, I told you. Sorry. And then ultimately they said, what are you expecting me to say?
I was horny and I messaged you. That's kind of it.
And then I thought that's pretty gross. Blocked them. And that was that. As chipper as I am about it now, I was I don't want to overstate it. I was, if it doesn't sound childish, a bit creeped out, a bit grossed out. I just thought this is weird.
Just before Politico were due to publish their story, Aggie decided to call the numbers. Unsurprisingly, no one answered the first number they tried, but when they called Charlie's, a man picked up. He didn't sound familiar or British. He was in fact American, and told Aggie he had purchased the number through the US app TextMe, which allows users to temporarily rent a phone number for a short period of time, enabling them to make and receive calls or texts without revealing their personal number. The man on the end of the line was only renting the number for a week.
I respect your journalism, but you've hit a wall, because whoever was texting, whoever you're talking about, clearly got rid of the number.
Incidentally, someone who had been messaged by Charlie would later claim they had actually spoken to them on the phone. They said Charlie sounded metropolitan, generic, and male. After speaking to security experts, Aggie and Dan learnt that neither of the numbers were registered to a mainstream mobile phone network. They also found the original picture Charlie had been using in his profile. The couple at dinner, who could conveniently pass for a man or a woman. The man in the photo had no idea any of this was going on, and no connection to Parliament. At this point, resistance only seemed to spur the honey trapper on. They became more intense, messaging multiple people a day. On the night of the 1922 committee, 4 people were targeted. Earlier in March, a Conservative MP made a complaint to Leicester Police about receiving an unsolicited image of a naked woman while sitting at home with his wife. As more staff in and around Westminster began to notice strange messages, several staffers privately informed the police. But no one had any idea if the same thing was happening to their colleagues or if they were a one-off. With Charlie and Abby still very much active in Westminster, the alarm needed to be sounded. Aggie and Dan published Politico's story on the 2nd of April. The story exploded. 6 more people came through within an hour of publication.
Several ministers, parliamentary staff members and political journalists have become entangled in a disturbing cyber honeytrap scandal.
The Daily Mail has the headline, MPs caught up in naked honeytrap sexting.
This evening, the Speaker of the Commons, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, he urged MPs to come forward if they'd received such messages.
Complete stranger gets in touch with you via WhatsApp, and within 10 messages you've sent them a picture of your privates.
By this point, the narrative had massively shifted from its Bournemouth origins. Previously, people had just assumed Charlie was a journalist snooping around for information. Now, conclusions ran from a lone creeper seeking sexual gratification to infiltration from a hostile state. But the big question that united everyone was, where on earth had the honey trapper got all these private numbers from?
So I was talking to one of the people who'd been receiving these messages, and it turned out that Charlie had said to one person that they used to work for William Wragg, the MP. So my first thought was, okay, well, that's not some cosmic breakthrough. You know, this person has made up a name and said they used to work for William Wragg, but I better do some checks on it. So I checked the register of MP's staff going back several years, found that, of course, no one by that name had ever worked for William Wragg. And then I texted William Wragg and I said, you know, has someone by this name ever worked for you? And he said, no, they haven't. We only realised something was up when I went back to one of the people who'd been receiving these messages and they said, oh, that's funny. I asked William Wragg at the time if this guy worked for him, and he suggested that he had. And so we suddenly had this situation where we had a contradiction in what William Wragg had said, and it later transpired, although things moved very quickly, that after I'd texted William Wragg, he had gone back to this person who'd received the messages and said, oh, when I told you that this person worked for me, actually I made a mistake and got mixed up. Things were moving really quickly by this point, and before we could confront William Wragg over this, we saw the Times story just pop up on their website. I mean, our jaws just hit the floor.
The Times story was broken by senior political correspondent Aubrey Allegretti, and it centred on this enigmatic figure and MP William Wragg. Allegretti had read the original Politico story and spoke to a few people he knew who had been targeted. One name that kept coming up was William Wragg, and when it did, the connection between Wragg and Charlie just didn't add up.
there were a sort of small cadre of people who were targeted who smelt a rat and pressed Charlie on what his connection to Westminster was and how he had got to know them and got their numbers. And it was through those WhatsApp conversations that Charlie said first that he interned for Wragg in, I think, 2022. And when he was confronted by these people who said, what you're doing is completely unacceptable and we're going to go to the police, he appeared to present the persona of a very frightened young man who almost realised that he'd played with fire and got burnt, got in deeper than he had anticipated. Now, whether or not that's true, we don't know. Very soon that day, I had evidence of Charlie saying that he'd worked for Will, and then Will saying to MPs who asked him about his connection to this person, Charlie, do you know him? Yes. I think Will's words were, he's fine but a bit gregarious. And then the following few days, after Politico's story was published, and there was obviously huge intense interest in this Charlie figure, Will then completely U-turned and tried to almost cover his tracks and say, I made a mistake, I don't know this person. And that was again another red flag that pointed back to him. So we get to, I think, 2 or 3 o'clock on the Thursday, and that's the point at which I'm fairly confident that Will is involved in this, and I have enough evidence that I think there's almost no way for him to kind of wriggle out of it. So that's kind of the point at which I made the call. We had that conversation very honestly and openly, and he was obviously very upset. He apologised and said that he felt as though this person had images of him that could be used against him, but he's never really explained why he felt so threatened, because he doesn't say that he was blackmailed directly. Some of the examples that I've heard about were that this Charlie figure asked for MP's phone numbers and said, you've only got a minute to give them to me, and put pressure on him like that. But what sort of repercussion or recourse Will thought he would face for not meeting that deadline isn't clear. If he were in Parliament, I suspect there'd be people asking him these questions. So we don't know the answers yet.
Turns out, William Wragg had also been targeted by the honey trapper on Grindr, but had ended up sharing explicit photos and was ultimately pressured to share the contact details of other Parliament members immediately or risk exposure. Wragg told The Times, I got chatting to a guy on an app and we exchanged pictures. We were meant to meet up for drinks, but then didn't. Then he started asking for numbers of people. I was worried because he had stuff on me. They wouldn't leave me alone. I gave them some numbers, not all of them. I told him to stop. He's manipulated me and now I've hurt other people. Many of those targeted could link themselves in some way to William Wragg and understood why they might be in his address book. But others were adamant they had never been in the same room as Wragg and baffled as to why he would have their contact details. Could it be that another official supplied the honey trapper with numbers and has still never come forward? To many, there were so many things that didn't make sense about the case. Not only were the honey trapper's motives unclear, their movements had no pattern or methodology. Some argued they weren't sophisticated enough to resemble a hostile state. But they were obviously effective enough to sound exactly like a man or a woman in their 20s and convince those on the other end of the line. Charlie and Abby were incredibly shrewd with job descriptions, place names and colloquialisms. They had a feeble but confident sincerity to them, which readily provided an imperfect human angle to the character spinning in the minds of those targeted. Kieran Martin, former Chief Executive Officer of the National Cybersecurity Centre, spoke to Aggie and Dan.
He's not in and of itself a security disaster by any stretch of the imagination. For some individuals, it's an extremely difficult and distressing and difficult case. But overall, from the point of view of the system as a whole, sometimes you get a bit lucky in that you get something that's a real wake-up call but doesn't actually do much harm. And that's probably where we are here.
And so, WhatsApp-obsessed Westminster got a wake-up call. And as it stands, most conclusions point to an intelligent but isolated Fisher, looking for a bit of sexual gratification. For months, there had been no official leads or connections made to Charlie or Abby. However, on the 26th of June, the BBC released an article with a curious headline.
Labour has suspended a party member after being notified of their arrest in connection with the Westminster Honeytrap Scandal, the BBC understands. Police arrested a man in his mid-20s on suspicion of harassment and offences under the Online Safety Act in London on Wednesday. Multiple alleged victims were informed by the Metropolitan Police shortly afterwards.
One month on, however, we've still heard nothing, and are no closer to discovering the identity of the honey trapper or their motives.